Ms. Jenny, is that you I see in the picture?
Yes, it is. Hello, Ira. How are you?
I am well. I am well.
I am well. I am well.
So I'm here. We have a whole bunch of guests joining us while the rest of the board goes on their tour.
Sure.
Sure.
Sorry.
So we're excited to be here.
Well, I'm hearing some echo, but we'll have some fun.
Okay.
That's better.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Is it?
Quite
So
clearly.
I believe that you can, okay.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Hey, Trace, how you doing?
You guys might want to stand up. It's a long meeting. You're gonna be dying after sitting on those benches.
It's kind of true. I'm
I don't
I'm
mind.
already kind of feeling it.
Vicky, you should have put me at a table of my own with all my luggage here.
We just had an extra table. But moved it, scooted it back.
Yeah, it's fine. Mr. Martin.
Yeah.
Makes all the difference in the world.
Yes, it does.
It does. What a lovely tour. Handouts. Did you guys
Enjoy your tour?
We did.
Very enjoyable.
Yeah.
All right, we're ready to go? Okay. Yep,
I just wanted to let you know that I checked it. Because since our last meeting.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Welcome, everybody, to Eastview. It's been a while since we've been here, so we're happy to be out and about touring our facilities. All right, so first on the agenda is the pledge. Julio, can you lead us in the pledge, please? Flag's right over there.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and then I would like to ask for a moment of silent prayer or personal reflection. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Jim, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, next on the agenda are commendations. We have a short list this time. We'd like to congratulate Miriam Mirza, who received the Cattaraugus County Youth Bureau Youth Citizenship Award for Youth of the Week. Yeah. I think that was back in January. We missed that the first time around, but we wanted to congratulate her on that
Absolutely.
for sure. Next up, communications. Do you have any?
Well, I had a few more celebrations that
Oh,
we
good.
received regarding some of our student athletes. Just want to let everyone know our boys basketball with a week left in the season. The team looks like it will be #1 seed going to the Class B1 playoffs. With, as of this writing, it was a record of 17-1. The playoffs will begin on the week of the 21st. Our girls, with a week left in the season, looks like they'll be 5th or 6th seed going into the playoffs. Our cheerleading finished 17th in the sectional competition. In wrestling, I wanted to make sure everyone knows Chris Bargy won the Class A and sectional title at 189 pounds weight class. He'll compete at the state tournament February 26th and 27th. Boys swimming, Gavin Westman and fly and Zach Clayson in backstroke both qualified for the sectional team and that meet is tonight on the 15th. So bowling, the boys bowling team finished 20-32 this season, but the girls team finished 46-2. The girls team qualified and will compete in sectional competition on Thursday, the 17th, and we wish them luck. The indoor track, junior Quinton Allen qualified for sectionals in the long jump and will compete in the sectional track meet on Saturday, February 19th. The other thing that I would like to mention also is on behalf of the student volunteers in the 3 pantries, the Olean Food Pantry, Loaves and Fishes, and St. Vincent de Paul, who all benefited from the Super Bowl of caring. Thanks to everyone who donated and who volunteered. It's a wonderful show of generosity throughout our school district. That's what I have.
Wow,
All right,
nice.
thank you. All right, yeah, there were a lot of those that we talked about the other day, but I'm glad you made the list.
Made no sense.
Yeah. All right. But nothing else for communications?
I have nothing
Okay,
else.
all right. Next, we're going to move to our discussion items. We have a presentation from the guidance department about our course offerings, postgraduate plans, and scholarship applications.
Where would you like?
Oh, anywhere is fine. There is a microphone there.
As we're getting started, I just want to remind everyone that the reason why we're having this presentation, and thank you for coming this evening and talking to us, is it is one of our district goals. And in the goals was to be regularly informed about just these topics. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. Mr. Andriano asked that I come and share some information with you. We have a lot of great things going on at Olean High School. I did give you a copy of what I'm going to be discussing here tonight. And basically, just to start off with the course options, of course, we have a spectrum of our core courses that will lead to a New York State Regents diploma for all of our students, including our students with disabilities. We, one of the really nice things that we have going is we have many dual enrollment courses, 18 of them through Jamestown Community College, 2 of them through St. Bonaventure University, 1 through Syracuse University, and we have 3 through the Rochester Institute of Technology as part of their Project Lead the Way program. This year, I counted up 530 desks that have been filled with students pursuing these college credit options. So we have a lot of students taking advantage of that. Many of our students are taking multiple dual enrollment courses simultaneously. So they may be doing a Jamestown Community College English and a Jamestown Community College History, maybe St. Bonaventure Biotechnology, something like that. So there's a lot of great things going on there. The next topic that I wanted to talk a little bit about was our high school post-graduation plans. And of course, These are fluid and, but as of now, Mrs. O'Connell, one of our counselors who is working with our seniors, has reported to me that 98 students have applied to college. 38 students are pursuing a trade or planning on entering an employment opportunity following graduation. In addition to that, we also have 5 students who have made preliminary arrangements to enter a branch of the military service. And I look back at last year's statistics as well, and they're pretty consistent. Last year, class of 2021, we had 93 students that made plans to attend college. 37 entered a trade or had plans of beginning an employment opportunity, and 8 students entered a military service branch. And the last topic that I wanted to briefly talk about was our scholarship opportunities. And this has just started for our seniors. I'm sure that you've probably seen a lot of the publications from the Cattaraugus Region Community Foundation. They just opened their portal on February 1st. So a lot of our students are in the process of working through that. That portal will remain open through March 20th. And of course, we always encourage our students to take full advantage of those opportunities. Just so that you know, we have already posted these out on our social media outlets, Parent Square. We run these announcements through our school morning announcement program. And of course, our counselors are available to help any of those students that might require some assistance in completing any of the applications. We also have 24 scholarships that we still hold in-house. And for those, we also put those out through an announcement. And also our secretary, Susie Broadbent, has been really good about sending copies of those applications right to the seniors' school email addresses, so that they have direct access to them if they want to pursue any of those.
So no excuses if they don't know about the scholarships.
We really try to get the word out to the best we can. And, you know, every year we really try to wrangle them in and get them to complete them. But I think it's sometimes when we get to this part of the year, reminding kids that their college process isn't complete yet, that we still have some scholarship opportunities that they can take advantage of.
Yeah, Matt, going back to the course options.
Yes.
I was just wondering if all 530 of those people enrolled in different courses, or, you know, the total enrollment, are those all seniors or are there juniors?
No,
as
we
well?
have actually, they're predominantly juniors and seniors, but we do offer a college keyboarding course that is open to our sophomores. So it's primarily the dual enrollment courses are from sophomore on up. But the majority of them are made up for juniors and seniors.
Like the project Lead the Way, pretty sure Lily took that as a freshman.
Yeah, those courses, they can start earlier. Yes, thank you.
All right, anything else? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, great information. All right, next up, we have a presentation about the DEI work group. Is you gonna take that, or is Aaron?
Well, yeah, so I attended a meeting recently, and the last thing I wanted to do was to say, oh, and by the way, work group, I want you to come to the Board of Education meeting. One of the things we talked about was we will have a standing item on our Board of Education agendas between now and the end of the year, certainly as long as I'm here, to make sure that we're touching base and hearing how this is informing our practices within the school district. And so I'm just here to give a little bit of an overview of what happened at our last meeting. And then we'll start with those more formal presentations and touching base in the next time. I just have to say, first of all, I'm very impressed with not only the work that was accomplished that day on February 2nd, but also just by the diversity in the room. of who we were, who we represented within the district. And we broke up into groups and we tackled some questions together. We started off with a community building circle, and earlier, for those of us who were in our, not our trip, what was that called? The tour. Thank you. In our tour around the school, that term circle was used. That term of circle and community building circles, it's not just for kids. It can also be very helpful for adults or any people who gather together. And it can be a way of sharing information about ourselves, but there are norms to those circles where discourse can happen in a very positive and productive way. Part of it with simple things like one person speaking at a time. And when you start out by everyone speaking about the same thing, it does help to build community, and that was happening at our meeting. The next thing we did is we talked about the New York State Ed culturally responsive briefs. And we all had, everyone on the work group has a copy of this book that State Ed put out on culturally responsive sustaining education framework. In the end, there are briefs to help us think a little deeper and much more broadly about these ideas that especially go around our 4 key points, which we as a group decided that rather than reinventing the wheel, it really does make sense that we're using those 4 main focus areas. So what we did is we broke up into 4 groups, talked about our core values, our short-term goals, our long-term goals, and what we want to see in our model schools visit. So we are planning on a subgroup of the group are going to go to the Erie Public Schools where they're further ahead than we are in these processes. And we wanted to have our look-fors set ahead of time, so we talked about them. One of my main takeaways from the group is our need to be intentional on how we approach this throughout the district. Whether it's, and it's not just a curriculum piece, although it is how we approach our curriculum and our course decisions and course requests that we just heard about from the high school, but it's also our hiring process, our orientation, faculty meetings, parent-teacher conferences, professional learning selection and use. There's so many areas of the school district that we should be using these, this kind of a framework or this lens to look through to evaluate that we are being equitable in all that we do, that we are ensuring diversity and inclusion in everything. So the reason why I mentioned that it'll be in a lot of different areas is it's a celebration, but it's also a warning. And the warning is this: we will be taking everyone to some uncomfortable places because there may be traditions or rituals that we're used to that might make us, or that we all look forward to in our schools that we might have to step back and reevaluate through the lens of DEI. So I mention that because I hope that not just our board, but those who are listening and those who are tuning in will also pay attention to, this isn't just something we do in a work group. It's not just something that happens in a couple of places. Our intention, as well it should be, is to see this permeating throughout our district. And boy, what a great work group. Our next step is we're going to be looking at a DEI policy. So there is a sample policy brought forth from our policy services at Erie BOCES, and that gave us a start, as well as the charge that we received from State Ed. But I just, my own 2 cents on that one. I think the policy services did us a really good favor in putting it together on what we need to look at. And it gives us a starting point. We'll see what from that sample policy works for us and what doesn't. Any questions?
Oh, that was very thorough. Thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Sure.
Yeah, I just want to say, looking at the different New York State board forums, DEI is getting a lot of legs in lots of districts. And I think that what we're doing here is well ahead of quite a few districts. So I think we're doing some great work, and I think we've got a great work doing, and we look forward to seeing what else comes out of there. For sure. All right, next on the agenda, we've got the budget.
Okay.
Jenny's gonna talk to us about the budget.
It is riveting stuff.
I was being serious.
Okay, Mr. Martell is gonna bring up the presentation here. So I'm gonna give you a brief presentation on the budget. I know I've gone through several areas of this in the Audit and Finance Committee. Mike, if you wanna go forward one slide. He's gonna be, I'm clicking him if you can't tell. So these are the more in-depth things that I've gone into at the previous Audit and Finance Committee meetings. Debt service, we've talked about materials and supplies and a bus purchase. We've talked about health insurance and foundation and expense-based aids, which we're gonna talk a little bit more about tonight. And we've really talked about salary and benefits. It's the largest portion of our budget. So as you can imagine, any little change there will have a significant impact. And then the executive budget proposal, which we're going to go into more depth tonight. If you want to advance forward, Mike. So this year, I know it's tiny, so I will talk about it. This is a slide that the council and school superintendents provide, and it's a line-by-line detail of the governor's proposal for us. A few of the things that I'm going to hit on, first and foremost, they have universal pre-K aid in here at the bottom of the form. Sort of ignore that for the time being. That's actually an aid that comes through the federal fund. So while there's no change there, we do not consider that in the budget that goes out to the taxpayers. So pretend you don't see that for the time being. Foundation aid, I'm going to talk a little bit about in the next slide. We're going to talk a lot about actually. Some of the things as we go down through here, I want to hit on building aid. Building aid will change slightly depending on the timing of our capital projects and when we close that out. BOCES aid, I think might be slightly overstated here at the 3.3 million. Again, if you remember, BOCES aid is based on what we spend this year. If we don't spend our entire BOCES budget this year, we will not generate that aid next year. So our goal each year is to spend the entire amount of BOCES money that we plan for, the expenses that we plan for, because otherwise next year's aid is going to be less than we anticipate. Mr. Martell is working on some expenses, going through our 5-year plan for technology replacement. So I do anticipate that the majority of our BOCES expenses will be made this year, but that may be just slightly lower than what the state has it at. Public access cost aid is grossly understated on this form. It's going to be just over $1 million. And as we get into the expenses, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Software, library, textbook aid, these are what we refer to again as our instructional material aids. So these are driven based on enrollment. So you'll see a slight decline in each of these. As our enrollment declines, so too does the aid for us. Let's go to the next slide. We'll go into a little bit more detail. This one you might be able to see a little bit better. Okay, so this is the same snapshot that I presented to you in January at the Audit and Finance Committee meeting. If we look at foundation aid, so as you know, foundation aid or our general operating aid is the biggest portion of aid that we receive. You may recall that this was new back several years ago, dating back to, I believe, 2007. But given the budget issues that we had in the few years following that, that really lasted about a decade after that, This aid was not paid out to us the way it was supposed to be. Next school year, 22-23, will be the final year that we receive a large increase in this because we will be fully funded at that point. 22-23, you'll see about an 11% increase here. Beyond that is where we really need to focus. We will not continue to see those 11% increases in that foundation aid at that point. At that point, it will be calculated based on the current law. The problem with the current law is it's an antiquated law. So some of the figures that they use are very antiquated. For instance, they use 2000 census data. Our data has changed, believe it or not, slightly since, 21 years ago. They also use enrollment figures since 2009. Again, a little antiquated. They also still use free and reduced lunch populations. Those two are antiquated because we now all have the CEP, the community eligibility provision, which means our kids get free and reduced lunches. Everybody does. So we don't have accurate free and reduced lunch percentages. So all of these numbers that this formula is based on are not current. So projecting that out beyond next year is difficult. Another big factor that comes along with that is enrollment. Enrollment is a big factor in this. If you look at what our enrollment has done, our enrollment has decreased. However, another piece of it is the students with disabilities percentage. So we actually get 1.4 per student for a student with disabilities. So if I have a gen ed student, they're counted at 1, special ed, they're counted at 1.4. Our special ed enrollment and percentage has drastically increased. So it's very difficult to project going beyond next year what that figure is going to do. With the numbers that we do have that we can plug in, we will not see an increase in that number. If we do, it will probably just be a very small percentage. I highly doubt we will see the 3% increase that is oftentimes guaranteed in that. I highly doubt we will see that. So moving forward, we need to project and plan for not seeing those increases in foundation aid.
We have very flowery projections for our overall state aid, coming out in the press and from various sources in the governor's office. I was just wondering, when you said that we will adjust 22-23 budget, that we'll see a large increase in our foundation aid because we're being made whole.
Yep.
Is that money going to come out of our increase, or is that increase over and above what we already have?
So the increase that we're going to see in 22-23 is over and above what we're seeing in 21-22. So if you look at the screen at the 21-22, we're getting $19,502,000 in foundation aid, and 22-23 we'll be getting $21,698,000.
Yeah, how much of that comes out of the projected increase in our state aid? Any of it?
I'm sorry. I don't-
Okay, so I think I know what you're saying. The projected increases in state aid that you might see in either the governor's proposal or in some of those state aid runs.
Right.
Mhm.
I think what Jenny's saying here is, and we've known this for a while, you can't trust all of those numbers in the bottom line percentage because a lot of those aids are expense-driven aids. And we may not be spending exactly what they're saying. For example, transportation aid is notoriously inflated when you get it from the state. So it'll show on the governor's budget, $935,849. Wow. If we're at $865,998, we don't see a tremendous difference next year. So we probably won't see it. That's why we have to be very careful as we estimate our revenues, that we can't just take what they give us and what they project Instead, what Jenny was saying is we take a look at what we're actually spending, because that's a much stronger indicator of what we should be able to anticipate in actual dollars next year. So you can't just go by what you might hear about a percentage of our
Right.
overall aid, because those expense-driven aids will not be exactly as they're projected.
Right.
If
So
I can offer two comments. One is, it's really disheartening to see UPK funding not increasing as it should. And it hasn't in years. That is not good. Secondly, I hope we're not leaving requested BOCE services necessarily on the table. And that's why things might not necessarily be aligned in terms of the dollars.
Yeah, Ira, if I can comment on that, those are both very good points. UPK, you know, what's interesting, and I agree with you 110%, because if we're really talking about, you know, seeing learning loss, and I know we hate those terms, but if we're really gonna start diving into where some of the issues are and really start trying to attack some of our special education numbers and whatnot, we need to start at the absolute youngest age possible. So I couldn't agree with you more on that. When we talk about the BOCES aid, so we're not actually not going after the BOCES services. Actually, we're looking at some opportunities to take advantage of some additional opportunities there. Where we're seeing the BOCES money that we're not spending is things such as field trips, the arts coasters, where we can't actually send kids to these events, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But what we are doing is taking advantage of some of the virtual field trips. So I know Jen Class has been really, really good about looking into some of those opportunities. So it's really just things such as that where I don't think we're going to max out those portions of our BOCES budget.
Sure, it's still a bumpy road.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we should also note that some of our BOCES purchases, we're going to be using some of our federal funds to make those purchases. And when we do, that's all fine and good, but it will not necessarily result in extra aid next year.
Right.
So we're weighing it out to see when that makes sense for us, because that is, it is being done with federal funds, so it's not an impact to our budget now, but we do have to keep that in mind as we plan for what funds we'll be getting back in aid next
Right.
year.
Right. So, so while it sort of seems doom and gloom into the future, it's just really more, they're finally paying us for the money they should have been paying us for the last 10 years. We're seeing these big increases, which is great, but next, you know, 23-24 budget is really going to be back to reality. There is some good news coming out of the state budget as well. The good news, they are projecting for some of that federal cliff that we're going to see after the Carissa and the ARP funding is gone. So that is good. They're going to be maintaining approximately $74 to $76 billion in the federal funding. So to the New York State schools. So fingers crossed, you know, we don't see those huge cliffs. They're also planning for a rainy day reserve, which is 15% for future economic uncertainties. I have to admit, I laugh a little bit about this. While I think it's fantastic the state is planning for that, and they should be doing that, I do find it selfishly a little ironic that schools are still only allowed to maintain a 4% fund balance.
Exactly.
But if we look at it from the positive, it's good that at least the state is starting to realize that we have to have these funding mechanisms in place to plan for the future. Mike, you want to go forward the next one? Here's another shot, and maybe you can zoom in on that just a tad bit. So this here is actually a snippet that I took from one of the presentations from Questar that I love this. It's sort of one little picture that talks about foundation aid. There's actually over 70 different data points that we look at when we figure in foundation aid. But this, you can see they look at the average cost of a New York State school. They take into consideration a regional cost index. So obviously the cost of living in, downstate is much higher than the cost of living here. They also take into consideration the needs of the students. This is where I talked about a gen ed student equating to one, a special ed student equating to 1.41. They recognize the fact that it costs more to educate special needs students. So they do take that into consideration. And then what they do is, so they take all of that into consideration and then they subtract out that local contribution. When we collect taxes, they figure in what our tax levy is and what amount we get per student. So they take that out of there. All of that together, they take all 70 plus data points and that equals our foundation aid. It's very, very complex. It's almost impossible to calculate, but we try it.
So being that that's 15 years old, their formula,
Yeah.
what are the chances they redo the whole formula here shortly?
I hope they do, because I think it really needs it. I think if they're going to do it, 23, 24, or 24, 25 are the years that we're going to see it.
I've heard a little bit of chatter that they might. do
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about it. Dr. Gielan, I don't know if there's anything else you could add that.
No, you're spot on. It's the advocacy efforts of a lot of our organizations, the New York State School Boards Association, New York State Council of School Superintendents. I'm sure SANES is doing that as well as NICED. I can't imagine that any of us are not crying that it needs to be updated and it has to be reliable. Now, I'm sure you can understand that the pieces that go into it, that's something that everyone's arguing over. It will become very political, but we have to keep moving and
Yeah.
pushing our legislators to do this.
Yep. Yeah.
Could we go back to the previous slide,
Mhm.
please?
Right there.
I'm looking at the formula, there. I wonder how many students we have. I can't read it very well,
Well, yeah, the
Here,
numbers
but-
aren't in there.
but we have students living in poverty
Mhm.
that is, they're worth more than a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
And a student,
Student
English
receiving-
language learner or a
Yep.
special ed student, they're all. So the way the formula is constructed now seems to be advantageous to our district. I would hate to see any adjustments to it that would be less advantageous, let's say. I mean, we all want reform, but at the same time, would that reform be necessarily good for the Olean School District?
You're right, Paul. So if we go back to what I talked about in the beginning, there are some points that will be good for us, some points that will not. Such as special education student, we have higher number now,
Right.
so that will be beneficial for us. Students living in poverty, we have more students living in poverty now than we did back then. That's advantageous. Students receiving free or reduced lunch. We don't really have an accurate count on that because we don't necessarily collect that data to the extent that we did before. English language learners, honestly, I don't know what our number looks at now compared to then. We don't have a ton of those, maybe 8, 9 in the district, so it's not gonna have a huge impact. What will have a negative impact on us is the fact that our enrollment in 2009 was
Is-
significantly higher than now.
Right.
So you're right, some pieces of it will help us, some pieces of it will not.
I have a question.
Yes,
So
Julio.
are we using these resources to effectively change the lives of these students that are poverty driven and disability driven as far as what we're getting from the state?
Well, I just want to make sure I understand your question. So all of the general funding that we get, we use to educate our students in general. So we don't get like specific amounts that say, you have to use this for students who are living at a poverty level above whatever. So this just generates our entire foundation aid, and then we use that for all educational needs of all of the students.
So.
Maybe I'm not understanding your
What I'm
question, I
saying is,
apologize.
we get more aid for disability and whatever.
Yes.
So I feel like those resources should be thrown towards
Yeah,
those.
should they get more resources? Should they get more?
They should never have to be taken, resources should never have to be taken away from those. That's what I'm wondering.
I see what you mean, yep. So when we get into the expense side of our budget, and we won't get into that too much tonight, but you will see at Audit and Finance on Thursday, I'll be presenting more on our, for instance, we'll talk about special education budget. We're looking here at special education students, we get 1.41% for each child. Our special education budget is continuing to drastically increase. So I look at it the opposite way. We're incurring all of those expenses, so they're giving us more aid. So if you look at the percentage in which our special ed budget is increasing versus everything else, that money there is definitely needed to go for that population. So I would say yes, that money is. And actually, I'm not sure the 1.41% in the excess cost aid we get is putting a dent on some of those things. Yeah.
So if you had your druthers, what would you change about the formula? Other than, giving more money to.
Quite honestly, I think they just need to start off by making everything current, making all the calculations current, using all the data points currently. I think we need to start by that. We can't project going forward if you're using data from 12 and 13 years ago. First and foremost, they need to say, okay, we're going to use baseline data from 22, 23, because that's the first year that we're making you whole. That's the first thing they need to do. Quit using census data from 2000. I mean, I was a senior in high
I don't
school, if we could only
understand
flash
that at
back to that, you know? So first and foremost, we need to make all the calculations current, using current data. Then we need to decide what makes sense to move forward.
Do we benefit from that because the population was greater back then?
Well, because you're using population data from today, but census data from back
Yeah.
then.
Well, they're using enrollment data as your baseline from 2009. So again, it's gonna, some's better, some's worse. It's really hard to tell. Exactly. If I had to guess, if we made everything as of today, our foundation aid would be less than it is proposed for next year. Like, you wanna go back? So now let's talk quickly about the tax cap. This is a prime example. So this 4.51 has actually changed since this presentation was put together. This is how quickly the tax cap can change based on one thing that we really have control over, and that is our capital levy. So talking with Bernie Donegan's office, they are projecting $380,000 be used next year for capitalized interest. I'm still hesitant about that number, but we should have a better handle on that on Friday. I don't think we're gonna see that, but they're optimistic. Considering that we're gonna use 380,000, the tax cap actually goes down to 2.67%. This is really the focus of the discussion that we need to have going forward is tax levy and foundation aid. Those are the two things that we really need to focus on going into the future. So knowing that our foundation aid is no longer going to go up after next year, and knowing that we've maintained a 0% tax levy for several years, keep in mind the current rate of inflation is over 4%. So as we talk about inflation going up that much, but if we maintain a 0% tax levy, we're really taking a loss because we know our expenses are going up much more than 4%, but we're not taking in any additional tax levy money. So we need to think about the long-term impact of that.
So what time do we raise taxes?
For this year, it's going to be balanced by the increase in foundation aid. you know, what's hard to project. Because we did have a discussion at our last audit and finance meeting about this, and it's really difficult to balance the negative impact of raising taxes versus keeping them the same, because, you know, if you raise taxes, then more people will possibly default on their taxes, and those, we will lose properties that are currently on our tax roll. So, you know, it's a very delicate balance.
It is, absolutely. Let's jump to the next slide and we can continue this conversation. So we talked about the tax levy, that's the revenue side and what we're bringing in. Let's talk about the expense side. So as you recall, at the Audit and Finance Committee meeting last week, we talked about some of these numbers. Salary increases for next year is approximately 4.4%. Benefit increase is approximately 12.88. A large portion of this is health insurance. So we know the two of those together, salary and benefits together equals about 61% of our budget. We know 61% of our budget is going up significantly. We're not taking in that extra tax levy. We have salary commitments that we recently committed to going forward. We know those percentages now. We know, you know, what salaries we've committed to over the next 3, 4, 5 years. So thinking beyond 22, 23, what are we going to do when we're not continuing to get that revenue coming in from foundation aid? But as you can see, these numbers are going to be relatively similar going up each year. So as these numbers go up like this and our levy stays the same,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I can't hear anything. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I can't hear anything. Hey, Mike.
we have to think,
Thank you.
we do go out, we do put our electric and our gas out to bid. So they are very competitive. We are also doing things, we're on energy procurement options. There are different programs that we have. So, you know, at certain times they'll ask us to turn down lights in the high school for a certain time. So we are doing all of those. For this past month in particular, it wasn't the usage, it was simply the rate.
Yeah, the cost of it.
It was simply the rate. It is gone through the roof.
We'll see.
Do we buy that through a coaster or through
So
BOCES?
one of the BOCES actually goes out and bids it for several of us. And we are actually on a municipal one, so it's not just schools, it's some of the municipalities as well. But anyway, so I actually pulled back the utility budget and am not sharing that yet because I feel like we need to dig a little deeper. And the lady, you know, at the electric company, I'm pretty sure she has me blocked by now, but she says, well, just relax, they'll go back down. So I haven't relaxed, but we'll see when they go back down. Do I think they will? Yes. To what extent? I don't know. So we're working on that. Evaluation of positions, I will tell you, and I'm not sure how many times we've had these conversations in the last 2 weeks. Every time an individual retires or leaves the district, we're looking at it with 2 eyes. We have to.
4 eyes.
Yeah, because moving forward, again, as we know, our enrollment is decreasing. We have to take a look at it, but we really need to align what are the needs of our students?
Yep.
And what staffing do we have and how do we match those? So we're working on that, very in-depth, let's say.
Good.
We're also looking at enrollment patterns, special education. As you know, and as you know, everybody probably knows, and all the districts are seeing, special education has really taken a hit yet again. Given what we've been through for the last 2 years, we're not totally shocked. But Olean City Schools has seen a huge increase in special education enrollment this year. We had 46 or 48 new students move into the district this year alone. They came to us, with IEPs, classifications and whatnot. It's just the reality and we have to deal with it. We have to figure out a way to deal with it. Our budget, the budget for 22-23, you will see a drastic increase. Futures has done their presentation. They're wrapping things up. I know they're going to have some great recommendations for us as well. Things that we can do both from a revenue and an expense side. But special education, we need to look at further as well.
And Jenny, so that is not just for us.
Yeah,
Every district.
Every
in the area
district.
is seeing their special education
Yeah.
numbers just
Yeah.
increase drastically.
Yeah.
And we have no control over the number of special education students that move into our district. That's an area we have to provide those services for those students. We don't have any other choice.
Yes.
So it's just one of those situations where you have to do your best. But,
Absolutely.
but I mean, as we've talked as a board, we've talked about this for a number of years now.
Yep.
Be happy to see what we got
Yeah.
as, our recommendations, because I do think we're gonna need to
Yeah.
seriously look at what we are doing and where we can.
Yep. We have about 21% of our population that is now special education students.
What was the percentage?
21%. There's areas where we can work more efficiently.
I just want to say this, that the fact that a large number of new special education students move to Olean is a compliment to our district. And the fact that we must be doing something right to have children and families move in to receive those services.
We talked about, oh, this just in, so I don't have to go off the top of my head. This was a big meeting. Talked about our COPS grants, which of course talks a lot about safety measures throughout the district. And we're starting our RFPs, our request for proposals on them. We talked about our annual review of emergency response evacuation and reunification plans. And we have a self-assessment checklist that we'll be going over and providing to our principals and helping them to go through so we can, it'll help frame our thinking in terms of safety. We talked about safety training, and we also just recently heard about another staff development or training opportunity out of the University of Buffalo. It's their annual school safety. We have a few people who are going to be attending that. We talked about Narcan training, Stop the Bleed training, CPI training, tourniquet training, pals and pairs training, EpiPens at athletic events. We covered the whole gamut. And I think that's a testament to having the right people at the table talking about it. We discussed emergency generators, and Mark gave us a real good report on our generators at each building. The reunification drill, we talked about that, although there's a real good chance that if we're going to be doing that, actually doing the drill, it'll be more of a tabletop type drill this year due to COVID, but we will be going forward with that drill. We also talked about securing doors, the need for drill training for substitutes, because we do a really good job for everyone who's in the building all the time. And we don't want to forget those who are with us on an itinerant basis in each of our buildings. Any questions? We have another meeting coming up soon. Do we have the date? Yes, it's February 23rd.
Thank you. I do have a question.
Yes.
Do we do, like, I assume we do CPR trainings. I don't know if I specifically heard that one, but is that ever open to like additional people, like outside of just the teachers or, you know,
Yes.
is that open to parents or community members to come in and take those CPR
Well,
classes?
It depends on who's providing the training and what time the training is happening. I have seen in some places where we're able to do that if there's room in the training, because they usually have can only do X number of people. And very often we have so many people within the district who are either required to have that training, or above the requirements, we have that it would be nice to have, and they participate in the training as well.
Yep. Such as like this time they opened up some of the cafeteria workers.
I know it came up in one of our TABS meetings a couple months back, and somebody was going to get that information back to us, and we never.
There may be a cost associated with the training to get card certified.
Yes, and what my experience has been is if there's room, then someone from the outside can come in and join in on the training at their own cost, because you're absolutely right about
Yeah.
that. So I'll put that down with things to look into on what our upcoming training would be, and see how we might be able to accommodate others for it, or at least advertise other places throughout the community who are providing that training.
I've never seen anywhere around here do it, which is why I was, you know, we had brought it up during one of the other meetings, you know, when you do have, you know, lots of parents or things coming into the buildings for sports events or whatever. I assume you probably have other people who are qualified to do those things there, but, you know,
Yes.
people who are interested in it, if they had the training, could help in a situation too.
Thank you.
All right, there's nothing else for the safety committee. Let's move on to the operations committee. Ira, do you have that for us?
Yes, we met February 7th and talked about the staff use of computerized resources for well over an hour. Later on tonight, you'll see a first read of the proposed replacement policy, if you will. Attention should be drawn to what I'll call bullets number 2, 9, 10, and 11. Beginning on page 5 of that policy statement, that was a lot of the conversation. We want to hear a lot of comments. So please provide them, and at next month's operations meeting, we'll take them into account and have a second read down the road. We also asked that we get an update on summer school programs down the road by the superintendent. And our next meeting is March 7th.
All right, any questions for Ira? All right, we had a Buildings and Grounds Committee on February 8th.
Okay,
Um,
we met, February 8th. To start off with, we got building tours for the next 4 meetings. Today was the first of which, so it's encouraged that everybody try to make it. We're gonna probably have another building tour sometime when we have our new superintendent, so he or she could get a scope of our district. As far as COVID updates go, pertaining to B&G, Mark thanked the staffing and the maintenance department for coping with the staff absences. We discussed our HVAC technician. Currently, there's no interest right now. The HR department has received applications and interviews will be conducted accordingly. Ira noted that BOCES is also in need of an HVAC position and the possibility of it being shared. However, Jenny noted that the district needs its own technician or even 2. Capital project update. We're waiting on SED approval. There was an OACM meeting scheduled for this week.
It's Friday and we have received approval. That's something to celebrate. We did receive approval from SED for our project.
Okay.
Yes.
Our expected bids are coming in higher than anticipated, so we may have to start cutting back on our capital project. Hopefully not. As a safety update, we have a new safety patrol officer at Orange. Doors are locking, security and fire systems are being checked monthly. Routine maintenance checks are conducted on elevators, maintenance agreement plan in place. The governor expected to make a decision regarding mask mandates in school, as that's an ongoing weekly battle. Timetable for ADA compliance issues and improvements. That will include the entranceway, ramp on the door, handicap access into the basement, foyer, interior doors, high school and lift area in the pit, in the stage area. And we discussed other capital project outlays, hot water tank for Orange. And our next meeting is going to be at March 15th. Any questions?
All right, thanks, Jim. And then we have the school health team that had a meeting on February 10th.
I can talk about that. The health team, yeah. So at the health team, we discussed the wellness policy in detail. As you know, the cafeteria review occurred today. They ended up doing it remotely, but it occurred today. We talked about the wellness plan and went over that. I believe you'll have the second reading tonight. The big focus that we talked about too was stressing what the district can fund for food items during the day. If the district is going to pay for anything, it has to meet the child nutrition guidelines. So we can't be buying, buckets of candy that sit on desks or cupcakes for a classroom. What I encourage teachers to do, what I encourage teachers to do is work with the cafeteria if you're gonna have a pizza party or something like that. So the pizza and the stuff they provide through the cafeteria meets all the child nutrition guidelines.
So we're not allowed, I know we have fundraisers that are candies and cookies.
So fundraisers can happen, you just
Okay.
can't sell those items during the school day. The regulations actually say from midnight until a half an hour after the close of a school day. So you can do the fundraisers, say you're doing a Niagara chocolate sale, you can do them, you're not allowed to sell those candy bars during the day. You have to wait until after the end of the school day,
So
yes, and that's been in place for quite a while.
I know it has, but I
So
can tell you
does
that
the
that's
buttery
happening.
popcorn that smells delicious at the high school count or not?
So if you, but if you pay close
That's a
attention,
vegetable.
the kids are not allowed to buy that until after school, that's why.
Do they really wait till 30 minutes after school?
They wait till the school day is over, yes.
You just said 30 minutes after.
Yeah.
that.
30 minutes may
30
be
minutes
debatable,
might be
it's
a
close.
stretch.
But they are not supposed to be selling those kind of things
during the school
students.
day.
during the school day.
But at dismissal, as the kids are walking out, I think that's what
Okay.
Yep.
Kelly is probably referring to.
Sounds
Could you have a table set up and be selling knife or chocolate or,
We're
you know,
still there
whatever,
30 minutes after the school
after the
day.
school day, you
I
can.
mean,
after the school day? Not a
Not
half
during.
hour.
And that's not new, that's been in,
I know, but
It's
you know,
Just saying.
you know, same with vending machines, like vending
Correct.
machines, if you have vending machines that are not filled with things that meet the child nutrition regulations, they can't be on. And again, these are not new things, they're just sometimes things that we need to freshen up on.
well, I think also because we were out of school for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And then we were hybrid for
Yep.
last year or whatever, I think we've gotten away from following those rules then, I think.
But we'll work on it. But that was a quick meeting.
Just like tonight's. Okay, so moving on. So for the board report, I'm just gonna go through a quick couple of things that we've been up to. 2 Saturdays ago, February 5th, Paul attended the Allegheny Cattaraugus School Board Association's legislative breakfast. Senator Borello and Assemblyman Ginley over there. And you guys talked about the needs of local districts and that sort of thing, and the wants of all the money in the foundation, but we'll see what we get. Thursday, February 10th, I believe Julio attended the NISBA education webinar, discussing the school board's role in curriculum adaptation. So we look forward to hearing any highlights from that when you get a chance to share. I'm sure it was good stuff. You'll see on the agenda later on that we are entering into an agreement with Superintendent Search Consultants, Dr. Teresa Lawrence and Dr. Thomas Ramming. We're excited to work with them to find the right fit for our district going forward. And then the other thing is tonight kicks off our building tours, which we haven't done since 2019. The last time we were in this building as a board for a meeting was in October of 2019. A lot has changed in this building since then. So,
Yes.
so we are happy to be back out on the prowl.
road.
Yeah. All right, that's all I've got. I went kind of quick because it's a meeting. But now
So
it's
the
your turn.
expectation is for me to go quickly. First of all, I'm going to pick up where you dropped off and say our thanks on behalf of myself and the Board of Education to Mr. Crawford for being the gracious host this evening. And it was a very good tour. It does feel good to be back in schools doing that. I learned today that the governor extended the executive order for COVID emergency through March 16th. And that includes along with it, being able to meet virtually in school board meetings. I only have 7. That was 1. Number 2, we're completing our 2022-23 calendar, which will closely mirror the CA BOCES calendar. One highlight is the return to split spring vacations, 2 one-week breaks. We surveyed everyone. The survey came back in very strong support of this option. Although I do appreciate the comments on both sides of this issue, I am recommending this calendar, not just because the parent square responses, as I just mentioned, but also because it does closely align with our diversity, equity, and inclusion that I spoke about earlier. It honors our students who attend BOCES programs, out-of-district programs, as well as those from other districts who attend our programs within our schools. Another highlight just for everyone, the first day of student attendance will be September 6th. So we'll see that calendar coming out at our next meeting. Number 3, this year's calendar is proving problematic for our usual plans for scoring the New York State assessments. So we're considering outsourcing some of our scoring to educational vistas through BOCES. More and more school districts are definitely doing this since the state changed their rules for scoring, both the 3 through 8 assessments and the New York State Regents exams. But I'm just reporting to you right now that we're looking into this option. 4, I'll be attending the New York State Council of School Superintendents Winter Conference. This is March 5 through 8 in Albany. And just keep that in mind for the operations meeting. We'll have to figure out how we can do that. I am on the State Curriculum and Assessment Committee. I'll be attending a meeting of that group, and also Commissioner Rosa will be addressing us. Sessions will be focused on capital projects, COVID, changes in regulation and law, budgeting and finance, proposed changes to graduation requirements, teacher certification, and more. So there's a lot of timely topics. I expect to be learning a lot, bringing it back to the district. I also intend to connect with colleagues while I'm there. And why am I doing that? Well, as an ambassador for the Olean City School District to help you find that great, perfect fit for your permanent hire of superintendent of schools. Fifth, we're embarking on our policy project. I spoke a little bit about that earlier. Coming up next, we have the DEI policy, regular board meetings, safety plans, fire drills, bomb threats that I mentioned before, and a host of other policies that are coming up. So just to know that we're working on that project. Other projects we're working on. We've been talking to Mr. Martell recently, who's working on our technology plan and updating that. An awful lot of folks were feeding into what our goals would be, and it is coming along and looking great. So I thank him for his leadership in that. A couple other projects that we're going to be focused on while I'm here is transition. We talked a little bit about it tonight, but it's our transitions from one school to the next school and how we do that and how we can make improvements there for our students to have the best experiences and be as successful as possible in their transitions. The other one is credit recovery. And I'm very interested in how we can look at credit recovery, not just in our high school, but we certainly are focusing on that. And I've been talking to Mr. Andriano about it, and his team already has some things in place, and that may even be just enhancing what we're already doing and or advertising what we're doing. So we're all very clear and aware of how our students can recover credits when, and perhaps using that emergency room model. So we're not waiting until the end of the school year to then try and get caught up afterwards, but in real time, how might we be able to address those learning needs? I did have one more. Oh, I already talked about it because that was about our safety committee.
All right. Anybody have questions for Dr. Gielan?
Oh, that's a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
All right, let's jump into it then. The consent agenda.
Move.
Thank you, Jim. Let me get a second. Second. Thank you, Paul. Any discussion?
I was just wondering how I saw only one name on the substitute list. And I have a concern, you know.
Should have been done before the meeting.
Well,
What are you talking about?
Is it a number
Yeah.
like that we don't have enough substitutes?
That we don't, yeah,
That's just a concern.
It's always just
Overall.
whoever is being added to it.
Yeah.
right. No, I
So we're just only
understand
adding
that,
one
but,
person.
you know,
I mean, we had a pretty healthy list last month.
Yeah,
okay.
sure. It's
I share your concern, Paul.
I know. I was
sure
just
you
gonna
do.
say that.
We would
I
love
can
to
tell
see
you
a
right
healthy
now,
list every month.
it's, we need more subs, no doubt about it, so. Good concern.
All right, any other discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, jumping into new business. We have a capital outlay project bid award.
Moved.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll
Second.
second.
Thank
I'll
you,
give it
Ira. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, next, we're gonna create an Olean Intermediate Middle School Assistant Principal position.
So
Thank you, Kelly. Is that Julio?
Yep.
Thank you. Any discussion there? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? BOCES, did everybody get a chance to look at the basis of service? We did have it.
We did have
We do
it.
have it on here. Did everybody get a chance to look at the basis of service charges Is there any questions on that? Doesn't change much year to year.
No,
So moved.
nothing,
Thanks, Ira.
Second.
Thank you, Jim.
no,
Okay.
Now's a good time for discussion.
yeah. I know we had a discussion about this last year, and the person who drove the discussion is not here tonight. So I'm just wondering if anything has changed, because we don't have, there are no actual numbers, and what we're doing is, I think the concern was that we were writing a blank check to BOCES.
Well, that's a good question. So what this is about is just the methodologies, meaning for
Right.
each individual is service, is it per student, is it
Right.
per course, is it, so it's just how. It doesn't guarantee that we're purchasing in or not purchasing in. It doesn't say how much because this is just on the methodologies. And it's, Ira, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. It is just in the rules and regulations of all BOCES that every school district, component school district board annually must take a vote on their methodologies.
If I could add that it's very formula driven, much like foundation aid, and has gone through a vetting process that has included superintendents who have approved the methodology, as well as, I believe, business officials who have had input to the methodology. So it's accepted by the component districts as well. This is a formality to approve that approach that's required of BOCES.
Seeing no other discussion, I'm gonna go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, now on to the cooperative purchasing agreement with BOCES. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Sure.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion?
This is there any difference between this and the same agreement that we approved last year?
No, there's no difference.
Okay,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a contract for the Cattaraugus County Mental Health Social Worker
So
Services.
moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second. Oh, good, Kelly.
Let's go with Kelly. Any discussion?
This is the same rate from, did we have this last year?
We did, the rate has changed.
Okay. Usually we have the rate change. Did it go up or down?
We went up, I believe it was 4,000 last year.
There's a chance. You gotta have.
Really? All right,
Okay, yeah, usually we have a level in there.
okay. Yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have abolished an elementary principal position. Kelly? Thank you, Julio. Any discussion?
Yeah, just to point out that this isn't abolishing any of our current elementary principals. We have had an elementary principal position vacant. And this is just cleaning up our hiring. Our positions.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, then we have the Washington Club overnight trip.
So moved and half on.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Julio. Any discussion?
I thank the faculty who give up a lot to make these things happen.
You're here.
Kids will remember those.
Yes, they will. And COVID willing, it'll happen.
However it happens.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'm gonna take 2 minutes right here and thank Mr. Crawford for putting out this little spread for us over here. And I'm gonna encourage everybody to stand up and go grab some fruit from the fruit tray and apple fritter. And I'm gonna refresh my coffee real quick. I've got 2 minutes.
This is like the seventh inning stretch.
You know, it's Taco Tuesday. Till 8:30. Guess I'm screwed.
So what, yeah, you're never gonna make that.
Oh. These are half-hour meetings.
What?
Way back
Really
in.
good apples.
I
I
know.
had a feeling we're gonna go probably another hour.
They usually always have those out. That's so nice.
Staring at.
Mr. Will?
Make it apple fritters and leave it. Gotta get rid of them. They're delicious.
I'm good, thank you, Matt.
All right.
Yeah.
Brain food. We got some cards here.
That's right.
Ever since I.
It wasn't it was a break. It was fairly short.
Well, apparently.
Okay, I just never really know that.
Knocked me down for a few days. It was
You betcha.
Means you have to take 2 trips.
know who did that. Thank you.
No,
Yes.
after hours.
I know, right? I know, right?
Andrew, are you gonna read the notes?
Do I have to?
No,
I
Yeah,
wasn't planning on it.
yeah. Uh-huh.
And then we were gonna go into all the policies too.
That's a lot of policy.
I know, there's a-
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, uh-huh. It was Michelle Obama, actually, but yeah. I know. I know, well, and you know, they, some of it is still like, come on, you know, and we can still use them. Yeah, and we can still use it, because everybody tell people, do it through the computer. You don't have that million reasons, you wanna have an ice cream party, just.
I said, you know what, nobody's gonna put their fingers in the break of us. I said, whatever I get, I get it.
All right, as soon as we see Kelly back in the room, we're starting.
Yeah.
Are these from Reed's? Oh,
Yes, I think so.
Brian made it.
yeah,
It's got that Reed's flavor to it.
yeah, it just does.
Just taste the calories.
There she comes. Paul's still getting back here too, so. Paul's still trying to figure out. Paul's trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B.
All right, thanks for indulging me, everybody. I see the students took the opportunity to just take off.
You need a scooter?
Did you get
But I understand.
We were
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's all window, shut the gap.
It was just.
All right, Ira, I hope you're having something sweet to eat too, because these apple fritters are really good. But we're gonna go ahead and move on. So next on the agenda is the notice of the annual school district public hearing and budget vote
So moved.
/ board of election.
All right.
Mary, thank
Yep.
you.
Second.
Paul, thank you. Any discussion on this one?
Make it riveting.
All right, so I'm sure it says on here that Vicky's got candidate sheets that people can pick up in her office.
They'll be available March 22nd.
It probably says that in here. All right, any discussion on that? Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, right, we're at the board of registration.
Yeah, so
Well, Iris just not back. Do we want to get his vote on this?
We had we started before we saw your face, but did you want to vote yay or nay on the budget hearing vote, or the budget vote?
Yay,
Yay.
Thank you.
as in yay
All right,
Yankee.
then we've got the board of.
As in yay Yankee.
All right, board of registration. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Then we have the list of the election workers.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Paul.
See a lot of familiar names.
It's true, year after year.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
those people that do that. Much appreciated.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Second,
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to personnel. We have a teacher aide resignation of Abram Webster.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide resignation of Marissa Phillips.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Kelly, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide resignation of Julie Cogswell.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a coaching resignation from James Pulowski.
Yeah, I'll second.
Kelly and Mary, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher resignation of Maureen DeCerbo.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a keyboard specialist appointment for Melissa Green.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations to Melissa Green. We have a teacher aide appointment for Joseph Clemens.
So moved.
Thank you, Paul.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion?
If I might just add, you've noticed in parentheses
Yeah.
at the end of our appointments, this is part of our position control. You'll see this from this point forward as we put names forward for consideration. You'll see that this one was a vacant position. And the previous one was replacing Shane Serto. So I just wanted to point that out to anyone who was wondering what that meant. Thank you.
All those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide appointment for Allison Friends.
so moved. Oh,
Thank you, Ira.
You can give it to Ira and I'll
Give
second.
Ira the motion and Mary the second. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide appointment for Colin Sullivan.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Any discussion?
So these positions had been going vacant until we found somebody?
Yes.
Okay, that's,
In other words, it's not a new position. It was a vacant
it
position.
was a vacant position from a resignation from a previous month, I'm assuming, right?
Or
I
perhaps
don't know.
even year. Yes.
Could have been months,
Yeah. Not one that was,
So like this last one we did was Allison Friends.
Right,
replaced
that
Abram
was-
Webster.
that was,
out.
Yeah,
right,
Yeah.
this one was,
an immediate replacement.
Yeah.
this was just an open
Mhm.
position. Whenever.
Okay.
All those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a coaching appointment for Carolyn Shields.
so moved.
Thank you, Paul.
I'll second.
Thank you, Julio. Any discussion?
Just thank you to Carolyn for coming back because she's a retired teacher in our district. And thank you to whoever recruited her, whether that was Aaron or Mr. Anastasia or whoever.
All right. Well,
Okay.
Give Mr. Anastasia the credit. I don't know.
hopefully it's warmer than today when they start.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a appointment for Olean Intermediate Middle School Assistant Principal for Maureen DeCervo.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Kelly.
Kelly, sorry. Any discussion?
Did we open this position up to everybody?
Yes, the question is whether this was opened up to everyone. It was posted both internally and externally. And then we had a committee that got together from OIMS, and we used a very similar kind of process as we did for our previous assistant principal interviews most recently. And they interviewed a number of candidates. And then again, just like before, I came in during the deliberations, so I was able to listen to that. And Mr. Wolf did not participate as a voting member, but as a facilitator, just as he did before. And then he and I did the second round interviews. And as long as this is in the discussion area, I just want to say that the candidate that we're bringing forth to you tonight, this is not a candidate who's here just because she's worked for us for a long time. She's also not here because she was given a gift. She is here because she earned it and had the full, might I add, unanimous support of everybody on the committee. And she has not only proven herself by her work and dedication here in the district, but when you hear her answers to this position to which she aspires, she speaks from a point of leadership, of dedication to students and doing what's best for students, and a full understanding of what leadership means. And it is with great pride that we bring her here, or I bring her here as a recommendation for the assistant principal in OIMS.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion?
Yeah.
All set, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Congratulations, Maureen.
Thank you.
She's in her room.
All right, moving on to discussion items. We have the second reading for the wellness policy, number 5661. Can I get a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Paul.
Sure.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion before we go ahead with a vote? Okay, we've looked at it a couple of times, so.
Right.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, then we have a first reading for the use of assistance animals. Any discussion on that?
So just to point out to everyone that this policy is a revision of an existing policy. There is a change in terminology in New York State using the words assistance animals. What's different here is therapy dogs. So that was a part that is optional for the school district, and in talking to our schools, with our school principals, this is a part that we wanted to have in here, was the ability to have therapy dogs. And the policy itself is fairly specific on what are the criteria we would use. You just can't bring in any old dog at any old time. I will be keeping my dogs at home.
Where they bring the dogs in and read to the dogs.
Yeah.
It's like her favorite part of school, so I fully support bringing the dogs.
Yeah, I think we've
not
got
to
a lot
mention
of
the fact that-
certified therapy dogs in
Kelly,
this area.
did we not
so
listen
this
to
will be a
about
great opportunity.
3 hours of a,
I did sit in on the law conference last
The
year,
law
and
conference.
there was a
it was like a
significant portion
2-hour segment
about service
on the
animals.
service animals.
So
Yeah.
whatever you do, don't allow a service turtle.
Yes.
But
Support parent.
that is,
Support.
there's a
Yeah.
difference between assistance and emotional support.
Yeah,
Correct.
So,
yeah.
but I don't know, this policy does not say anything about emotional support animals, which could be, you know, a gerbil or.
It was
or a
very
turtle or-
specific in the legal thing that you want to say service animal
Yes.
or therapy dog,
Yeah.
but you do not
Have the option.
put any additional, you know,
Yeah, and it was pretty clear on that.
it was very clear.
Yeah. It was clear
There are
in our law
There are
conference.
no other animals to be brought in as assistance animals.
Kelly and I were like,
No support pythons, please.
A miniature horse was on the list.
A miniature horse was on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say from a friend that has a therapy or a service animal, that it was because for, I believe, larger people, if you're supporting yourself by walking with the animal, that a miniature horse is actually
Better
more
than a dog.
stable and sturdy than, say, certain dogs.
Will they clean up after the?
I imagine they come with
That's all
them.
covered in
Right.
the policy.
It's oh,
It's in the
okay.
policy.
I should have looked at it more carefully.
All right.
I
More
guess.
carefully.
So that's our first reading. I think we'll let that one
Right.
fast for a little bit, and we'll come back to it.
Let it ride.
So the next policy is the gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms, which is a new policy. Any discussion on that one?
How many of these do we have? Or are we going to try to?
We have more than
Physically?
high school.
Yeah, we have more at the high school.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's a part of
Probably have
every
the most
ongoing
in the
business.
Elementary school.
I'm sorry.
I mean, all of the schools here, or all of the bathrooms here in each one of these classrooms are technically gender neutral. You have
They
the
are,
most
yes.
here in this building, I bet.
It's also something that has been a part of our capital projects, and it will be a part of all of our capital projects going forward too.
I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
Somebody speaking from experience as far as having to go in the bathroom with an opposite gender to help or help. And then maybe not going into the male bathroom or
Right.
the female bathroom, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, that's why the doors are go far from most of the, all the way to the
Right.
bottom to the top, so for that purpose, we took that into consideration years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we were.
This is really a question of the policy catching up with our reality.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
We were ahead of the curve on this.
In fact, I would say, let's waive the second reading because I think we can adopt it as it is.
I'm fine with that.
I would, yeah.
So is that a motion, Paul?
Yeah.
I would move that we adopt this policy.
Okay, I have a motion from Paul to waive the second reading and adopt this policy.
And I'll, go ahead. Yeah, second also.
And Julio is the second for that. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, let's move on to the next policy. We have a first reading for the professional growth and staff development. So, well, do we want to waive the,
That's what you're making.
this is the first reading.
That's
Is there any
just the
discussion on that?
Oh, sorry.
I
Jim's.
I'm just going.
I would,
So,
Never mind.
I would ask, what are the professional or educational development requirements for the Board of Education? Because we used to hear about that, and then in recent years, we have heard nothing. But I'm just wondering are we included in this because there is a state law that specifies a certain number of professional development or educational hours to retain a position. So I just don't know where we stand as board members on this.
As board members, that's what NISBA's for. We choose to take the courses that are offered.
Right.
So it's up to us as individuals.
You know, nobody keeps track of who attends this and how many hours. Or do they?
No,
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do.
But I just don't know if there's any enforcement there.
Whenever you sign up for a conference, Paul, whether you do it or I do it, NISBA keeps track of that. And there have been numerous meetings where we've recognized
Right.
individual board members for their number of hours or credits that they.
yeah, I got a certificate last fall, and so did Ira. Got
Yeah,
a really
so
nice
Ira.
one. Remember Ira? Mine was just a paper one. Ira was a nice big plaque.
Iris put in some.
Yeah,
hours.
yeah.
But as far as, yeah,
That's up to the individual board members to pursue that training.
there is a
Right.
requirement, so you have to do the initial training, the first.
Yeah, the initial one, right?
But after that,
I don't think there is.
Kind of up to us.
Yep,
That's why we go to conventions when we can and try to take as many seminars as we can and,
webinars.
but the webinars.
I think that falls under a different policy, what you're referring to, Paul.
I think so.
We have a board policy,
Okay,
one that speaks to the board.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You do.
Exactly.
yeah. I'm always confused as to whether we are considered staff.
We're not-
Yes, we're
No,
not.
we're not.
Yeah.
We're not staff, we're
We
elected
don't get paid,
volunteers.
Paul.
Oh, we're not
Right.
collecting a paycheck.
That's right, we're elected volunteers.
All right, so back to this specific policy. Is there any other discussion? I know we changed the wording on there to professional learning
Mhm.
to line up with.
I know they said social emotional operating on the policy, like development and stuff like that. Was there any like DEI stuff in there as far as the development of staff and stuff like that?
I want to say on the second page, I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, there is, okay, I understand that question. There is a relation to this policy in the DEI policy that's coming up at the next meeting. Yes,
Okay.
so this just talks about the staff development, professional growth plans that we have to do annually for the state and when it must be submitted. There were changes, this is a revision to an existing policy because there were changes in when that happens and how that happens. So this is bringing us up to date and having a policy that reflects the changes at the state level. What goes into it and how that's developed is done not only by what they say we have to have in there, but it's also by our district goals and using our own data from year to year, staff inventories and their interest surveys, as well as changes to law and regulations that will dictate the professional learning that's required. And DEI it will speak to this too in that policy.
Yeah, there
Good
is a
catch.
slight mention on the second page, letter B, first thing on the page. It says, to tie into.
Yes.
I don't,
Culturally responsive and reflect the needs of the community.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's that element to it, for sure.
It's a nice disclaimer.
The only other question I had was mentions mentoring and mentoring programs. And have we come to any agreements with the bargaining units over that particular aspect?
This is dictated by law that we must provide it.
Right.
So the only part that's in our collective bargaining agreement is how we do it, not whether or not we do it. And at this level, it's all about that in the policy, we're putting in that we will do it.
We'll include a provision for mentoring program.
All right, do we want to sit on that one then? And look at it again?
Well, this is a first reading, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes,
We'll look
please.
at it. Okay, all right, next up is the first reading for the records management policy, number 5670. Any discussion on that one?
my only question here is, it says that all of our records will be digitized at some point. Is that not correct? I'm just wondering about whether there's a statute of limitations, or somebody who, because we have all of these paper records in the basement of Olean High School. And is there any limitation on how long we have to keep someone's transcript who graduated from Olean in 1950 or something?
Yes, there is an entire schedule of all of our records, not just transcripts, but any district records. And that's all taken care of and through the archives in New York State. So we have an entire list of everything from assessments and grade reporting to every document and record we have. There's a schedule of how long we keep it. But your question about whether it's a paper copy or a digitized copy, it does not matter. So what many districts have been doing, and I understand that we have embarked on this project as well, is to take those records, digitize them, so they're quickly indexed and easy to get to, so someone doesn't have to go down to a dark, dank basement and try and find a record. They can just put it in, search it, bring it up, and send it to whomever needs it.
I have a question. How has this policy been revised? What were the changes?
Oh, my goodness.
That have to do with the
Ira,
digitization?
basically, it was, retention and disposal of records. If you recall, less than a year ago, the board had to adopt that new retention
Right?
thing from the state. So it's really just that second paragraph, retention and disposal, where it references LGS1.
Okay. I mean, if that's the only revision, I don't see why we can't waive the second reading and get on with it. It's a matter of.
Motion then, Ira?
Yeah, I agree.
Is that a motion for Myra then? To
Yes.
waive the second reading?
And please also note the date that this is
I
it's
see
2
it.
years old.
2020.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're just cleaning.
yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you, Mary. Any other discussion on that? I'm gonna push forward the vote. All those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, on to the revised staff use of computerized resources. Any discussion on this one? There should be. There has been.
I think, concern of one of our board has been in the past, security and specifically cybersecurity. I don't know, I'll have to review this one again. I'm not ready to vote on this one yet.
Please do spend some time looking through it, because we have, as a committee, I will just tell you, for about how many months? Kelly,
Operations,
have we been,
The operations committee's been looking at this pretty extensively now for a while. it
we
seems.
have,
you're
Yeah, there-
comfortable with it?
well,
as-
No, I,
As
no, I'm not
revised?
saying that, I'm not.
no, I don't think we are.
But I
think
want you to
that
spend some time to look at it.
Oh,
so that
okay.
you know what
The
we're
reason
voting
it's on here tonight really is because we need the discussion of the whole board,
Right.
because this has really bounced around
We're
operations a lot.
inviting your
We're not all
comments.
on the same page on
Right,
that committee as to we
what
want
are
to do.
your?
Only two, the community and other groups need to weigh in. And we talked
Yeah.
about that at operations. This, which has been a rallying cry, needs to continue to be a cry for greater input.
At the appropriate committee meeting.
No,
No.
So,
yeah,
right, right, you're
we
saying
can't.
no,
We
the
need
whole
to have
board,
the
Jim.
discussion here.
we have talked about it at the committee. We are now bringing it in front of you as a board here. We need you guys to weigh in on this.
Yeah,
We
I'd
need
like to
have the
correct
discussion.
something that was said a little while ago, though. It's not as if everybody on the committee loved every word of it.
No,
However, what we're bringing forth has the support of the whole committee,
Right.
or we wouldn't have brought it because it has been deliberated and talked about.
Did we, in this new one, I didn't see any of the highlighted, I thought we were gonna highlight this to mark up the things that we had made changes on so that people knew where we wanted to
Right.
talk. And I didn't see that in my copy on.
I commented on that in the report earlier. It was points 2, 9, 10, and 11.
Right, and that's what I have.
Yeah, but I thought we also,
I thought we were
we also
highlighting
looked
it
at
on here
some
so
other
people knew
changes
what we
too.
wanted to discuss, really.
Okay.
We can send out a mark.
Yep, we'll send
So-
out a
Well,
marked up version.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
I
Mhm.
mean, I don't know, maybe Julio, you sat in on the conversation and you didn't get to talk at the last meeting. Do you have some thoughts you'd like to maybe share tonight that might help?
I did, and I sat as an outsider, not participating.
Well, yeah, because you're not on the committee.
There was good points on both sides. There was two or more sides to that committee and that talking about this policy. And one of our board members who isn't here tonight, she brought up some very valid reasons for these policies. And I could see the other way on the policies. I feel like there has to be some repercussions for the media use if used in the wrong way by our staff, but some others might feel differently. I know it's First Amendment and it's hard to make a policy with social media, so I'd like to see what the community and the board, and I'd like to hit as many areas as possible before we adopt the policy. But we do need to take action on this.
We've been trying to have a social media policy for years. And that's something probably, I shouldn't say we have to wait for the state to clarify, because if you have 700 school districts, you get 700 policies, that's just not gonna be productive.
Well, we do have a policy, it's just,
No teeth.
well, how much teeth can it have, that's the question.
One important point to add is that this policy that we're talking about is met with our lawyer's approval.
Yeah. That's important,
But so was the other policies.
yeah.
At that time period.
That left us in a position where we.
Well, we've added quite a bit, I think, to this policy. if I'm
Yeah,
not-
this
not
is
mistaken.
a different a policy
Right.
than what ours was, but I want to know that we did have a policy. We did
Yeah.
have a policy. It's not like we didn't have a policy. It wasn't a policy that was as in depth as this one that we're bringing forward.
Right.
Definitely this has more.
So
Do you
not,
agree?
not having attended the
Yeah,
meeting.
I would agree. It has significantly more, but Janine, can I say her name?
Yeah.
Janine made some good points as far as possibly painting ourselves in the corner, as far as how do we enforce it when issue arises in our community that some members may not like, but others are okay with. That's part of the problem.
But it all goes back to the First Amendment.
Well, there have been some recent decisions, you know, on the federal level about First Amendment rights, and unfortunately or fortunately, you know, depending on your point of view, the interpretation of the Supreme Court is very, very broad on that. So, you know, it's difficult to have a policy that goes counter to recent judicial decisions.
It's always gonna be an issue because if you're an employee and you're doing things on your own time, that's far cry from doing it differently if you're on district property doing it. I mean, it's always, we're always gonna have that. Yeah,
Well, that's a good point, because the source of the comments, you know, especially if you're using school equipment, that becomes an issue.
yeah, like I said, but once you're off property, then, I mean, if you're doing social media and you mention the district in a kind of setting fashion, that might be up in the air.
I'm not a lawyer.
No.
But like, at the end of the day, there's certain things you can't say as far as being, and then you have to come back to a building and work with said. How does that work as far as people being comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, that, he's referring to the second paragraph there in the reporting violations. You know, you guys really need to take a look at that and see what it is that we're proposing, that we're talking to you about, because it's, you know, it's pretty specific.
I guess I do.
I think.
Yeah,
I do.
I did take a look at it, and I was not at the operations committee meeting, and I like a lot of it, and I think that the committee did a great job putting this together. But and I'm glad that the lawyer has been through this one, is correct? Okay. So at this point, I'm suggesting that we let it sit till the next meeting, and we look for any input from the outside through the superintendent's office would be wonderful. And if anybody else has any more thoughts,
So for those who weren't at the last meeting, you might want to look at this one that we got in our agenda today and look at it against 6410 that
Right.
was part of the operations committee that went out originally. Because what you'll notice that's a big difference is on the first 6410, there is a 9, 10, and 11 listed there that have been removed. And they're not there anymore, so you have your number 12 becomes your number 9. So the 3 that were removed were really the ones that if you were to say anything had any teeth in it, they probably were your ones that had the most teeth. And we took them out because there was a discrepancy in the group between whether or not this policy could have those, you know.
That's where
and
And
our
that's
compromise.
the big difference. I mean, it's not, the way this policy is written, I'd be okay with it. But the original 9, 10, and 11 also had in there it was a little bit reaching, less lenient. I mean, it gave you maybe made you question a little more what you might post to your own social media account.
You know, I mean, what you might put out there to the public, whether or not we could actually enforce it was the big problem, should it be in there because it might not actually be enforceable. So as it was, 6410, the original was vetted by our lawyer.
Yes.
And she has said that she can back up the original. The new one has all the same stuff, except it's missing those 3 things that, quite honestly, if you were ever gonna look at the policy and say, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this,
Yeah,
they're gone.
those 3 would have been the things.
So-
to look at.
I don't know, I mean, I honestly don't hate the original copy. So, I mean, and that's really what we need to
6410
discuss
I didn't hate it either.
is there, I mean, I think it really, the original made you think a little harder.
Was
Think it did.
6410 our policy?
6410 is Allegheny's
Is it
policy,
Allegheny?
and they happened to use
The same. as
Marnie to, not, is it Marnie?
Yes.
Marnie,
Yeah.
to do it.
That's correct.
Okay.
And she had vetted that.
And
So,
she-
and
she's
I'm
been
sure
through it.
you've read this over very carefully before this evening, but I think when we're talking about postings, it's really important that the difference in this policy, it doesn't say that you can't. We're not infringing on anyone's rights. On number 5, what it does say, and that's important, that if your comments or viewpoints on topics related to the district employees should state that the information is representative of the employees' views and opinions, not necessarily the views and opinions of the district. It's also very clear earlier on about using the district's name in your own social media profiles. And that when you do, you are reflecting the views of the district and you're being seen as that employee, not as you as an individual. So what this can also do is help prospective employees and current employees just be aware of the ramifications of what you say, being aware of what happens and how long, which is forever, comments and views can be up there and your posts can be out there. But it's also the reminder of not using district-owned
Absolutely.
stuff and making sure that you don't disclose, like on number 6, confidential information. These are the kinds of reminders that all staff need to be reminded of and is good practice. But yes, please make those comments and let us know.
I mean, the
Your thoughts?
number 11, we went back and forth on quite a bit, but I really think it is important, and it for those that don't have it in front of them, it reads, the district recognizes that employees are entitled to free speech protections under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution when they speak as a private citizen on a matter of public concern. However, a district employee may be subject to discipline or discharge if his or her speech causes disruption to the district's operations or threatens to interfere with such operations. And I think that one is important because whether or not we can prove that it caused the disruption by having it in the policy, at least it's out there. I mean, you're not meant to do things that would disrupt our school environment.
And we
And
think that if
If
people
that
were to
happens in your
read that,
personal life or your private life, if it makes it onto the
Exactly.
school property is where it becomes the disruption.
And if
And I
people
think
were
that's
to read
important to
that,
have.
I mean, whether or not we can, whatever, enforce it, I still think being able to read that will stop and make you think about what it is that you're putting out there, what you're doing. And that's, should be part of what our goal is with these policies as well.
Well, shouldn't this be part of some sort of an in-service training for all employees? And
Staff development.
staff development, exactly.
We definitely knew, yeah.
We have to have a policy though to educate anybody on first. I mean, we have to
Right.
come up with what we want to put out there.
So I have a
I
question.
mean, it's fine to approve a policy that we can all agree on, but if
This policy, however, also states in the very beginning of it, which we added, that it has to be reviewed and signed off on by the employees yearly.
Every year.
So
So
everybody,
that goes to what Paul's saying.
Yeah, every year.
every year you'll have to read through this and you'll have to sign off and say,
Just
yes.
like we have to
So
do
it's
trainings on
it's
all
right
the
attached
others.
With your
I'm
sexual
sure
it's in
everybody
here.
reads it very carefully too.
Just,
Yeah.
I mean, just like you do your sexual
Just like
harassment,
you
your
did
yearly,
tonight.
whatever,
Yeah.
5, this will be one.
Right.
Let's keep in mind, this might be updated on a yearly basis based
Well,
on
it's-
3 different things, contractual, legislative, and lawsuits.
They're all all of our contracts are.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
So let's just keep that in mind in this one.
The only thing I would ask is that when I look down through the policy, it looks like these kind of things just drive me bananas, but some of it's indented, some of it's, I can tell where our policy is and where we have put the new policy in, and I just wish we could make the whole policy uniform in spacing and how we're doing it, because I can tell you what's new and what's not just by looking at that. I think we should make it a whole nice
Excellent point.
policy.
Is there any way, I know this is the first reading, is there any way we could have maybe Marty come and explain, hey, this is something that may have some teeth, this is something that won't, but it's just there to discourage or anything like that? Can we have her here in front of the public so the public knows that what kind of position we are in as a board?
I don't think that's a terrible idea.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
I like
Depends
that.
on her Scheduling.
even if we have her on Zoom.
Right.
you know.
Yeah, even if she's on Zoom.
And she's been on Zoom before.
Yeah.
So
Is that executive session or open to public?
it would be open to the public.
I mean,
this
because
is-
it might be,
This is a public discussion.
yeah, but still illegal.
But
We
yeah,
have to ask her.
yeah, that's a good question.
She'll dance around it.
Policy discussion. She'll give us a straight answer.
Well,
So, but let me be clear, because I guess I'm a little fuzzy on this one. Is it to get her guidance in the development of the policy or to help us with the messaging of the policy? What are we asking for?
Probably both.
A little both.
I would imagine, as far as, I mean, we're trying to figure out a policy.
Mhm.
And we're talking about, the part we're really talking about is whether the policy has teeth or not. The lawyer would be the best person to tell us whether she can do anything about it as far as whether it has teeth or not. So I would like the public to know, as well as us, to know what we're actually dealing with and have her explain it herself. Because that's the person we're gonna have to go through with any of this conflict. So
Right, but we did check with her and we vetted the policy with her.
we did,
Right.
but I'd like the public to also know it. We could talk about it as a board together, if that's possible.
Okay.
well, when you say we, was that the entire committee that discussed it with her, or was it just,
No, I did on behalf of the board. Usually the superintendent connects with the attorney.
Yeah, I'm okay with the superintendent checking in and getting a blessing that way.
Well, we did get that. Right?
We
Dr.
did.
Healy did, she did that, yeah, she talked to.
Marty said she could take the policy exactly as the original was.
Right,
She said
And that
she
she wrote it, basically. I mean, she's good with it.
okay.
I mean,
Well, that's the thing, like when I buy a truck, I take it to my mechanic first and I say, hey, is this a good one? Because you're gonna be working on it.
Right.
I mean,
They
she
say yes.
says
then
she
I'm
wrote
good,
it.
you know?
She did the original work on it. I mean, so I'm okay with it as it is. I mean, Janine isn't here tonight.
I'm
and
okay
she-
with it as it is as well.
So.
As it is right now, the way it is right now,
Or the original.
or the original.
No, what you're speaking of, the points that are on the cutting room floor.
Okay.
As putting them back in.
Yeah, with Marnie's blessing.
I mean, I
I'm
personally
with
think
Ira
our
on
lawyer
that.
wrote it. If she says she can defend it, she can defend it. And if she loses, she loses. I
Right,
mean.
Which could be said of a number of policies too.
Yeah,
I mean, it really comes
But we're
down
just
to the
trying to do our best.
implementation.
Yeah, I mean, but I think we're all in agreement that something needs to be written in, something needs to be changed, and this is what we brought to you after
well,
many months.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's-
I would look
let's-
at both and at the next discussion, be prepared to say, okay, I like it either
Yeah.
without or with it. I
Yeah,
mean, that would help us a lot.
it would.
Homework assignment.
So yeah, I would say, let's look at both again, specifically looking at those three parts that were cut out to this one. and then share our opinions with Ira, because this is gonna go back to operations one more time.
Well, I would say with that, with our superintendent, and then she can summarize them for the committee and the rest of the board as well, but I'm hoping, the TABS group and other groups also have a chance to take a look at this stuff.
All right, I think that's a good idea. We'll
To the
forward our
superintendent.
thought to
Is that
this-
okay, Karen?
Yes.
We
It
have
is.
a
I did
TABS
not,
meeting tomorrow.
I like the idea of, don't have an agenda for that yet, do we?
No, I didn't send one out yet. I didn't actually receive any comments, so I will send out, if we can maybe bring in a couple copies of this policy tomorrow. Can I get that, or can I get a?
So let me understand this. So we've given this to an operations committee to be in charge of the policy. We brought the policy to the full board because that group wanted the full board's discussion because it was something that warranted it brought together the attention of a quorum of board members that we brought it here.
Yep.
But then to send it back, are we sending back? I'm very unsure about this. Is it for their approval? Is
No,
it for?
it's for last call. It's for last call.
Which
We're
version?
just looking for input, as you know, we're letting it kind of simmer
group
for,
hasn't- And bringing it back here makes a lot of sense. Sending it to another committee
Yeah, I don't.
that I'm not even sure what the charge of the committee is very,
Right.
it's a very uncertain
I mean,
thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I must have misunderstood because I thought we talked about it in operations. We brought it here to you for you guys to have looked through to see what you thought about it. And then, my idea is I thought we'd take what you guys had to say and then we do whatever we're gonna do with it and then bring it back. I mean, that's.
Bring it back. Yeah, second reading next month.
I'll use that committee's work.
Yeah, because I'm kind of wondering what we've spent all those hours on that
All right, so
time.
one last call for input from the board for the operations committee. Just give the information to Dr. Gielan, your
Oh,
opinion,
yeah.
mainly regarding those 3 items that were cut. Operations will meet on March 7th, and then we'll have our second reading here. Yes, the 22nd. By here, I mean Washington West. Okay, how's that sound?
Perfect.
Agreeable?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to, where is that thing? The information items. Ooh, all right, so there's the meetings. Everybody take a quick look at the meetings, the ones that you're in charge of, dates and times, make sure everything's good.
We'll be rescheduling operations. Rescheduling operations.
Yeah, are we rescheduling operations?
I think that would be a good
You
move.
said,
I think we're
Dr.
good.
Gielan?
We should.
uh-huh.
I should probably be there, huh?
So what about the 14th then that'd be the next Monday? I'm just spitballing. I'm not on that committee.
You're moving us
Yeah.
along, though. That's good.
That's good,
I
yeah.
think that's okay.
That works for me.
And then
Ira, is that good?
Yeah, one way or other.
We have our board retreat on the first.
the first, yeah.
What time is it starting this?
6.
All right, so we'll look at the 14th and we'll get that information out to Jamie. Okay, any other changes to those dates? Everything else looks all right? Okay,
Is there an executive session?
there's need for an executive session for
For the
personnel.
purpose of personnel and also the possible sale and or acquisition of real estate.
Yes. Can I get a motion?
So,
Jim? Second?
Second,
Paul? Any discussion? Do we need to invite anyone besides Dr. Dean?
Yes, may we invite Jenny Bellotta
Okay,
and also Mr. Wolf.
all right. Congratulations. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It is 8:42. Now, where are we going for executive session?
The music room.
We got to be able to
Go to
get,
the music room.
we got to be able to get.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely that.
I guess
Yeah, but
for,
we got to get Ira.
I guess for the.
Yeah, we would have.
Oh, yeah.
Again, we don't need any balls.
Today is a 2:15.
Hey, Mike, are we good for me to move into the other room or what?
No, we're probably staying here, I guess.
I'm
gonna send you a new link in a few minutes. I'll email it to you.
Okay, so I'll leave this meeting.
Yes.
We are going in the other room?
Yeah, there's something about public executive session in this space. It's not